What's going on YouTube? This is the second part of the animation series. I made this video already, but I didn't like the way it turned out because the audio was low and I just wanted to remake the video. So this is, I guess, a remake of that video. But besides that, let's get into it. So this video is going to be making a modular rig for our skeletal mesh of our character. And then we're also going to be making the static hose, so we can then use that to make the reload animation in the next video. If you're using the mannequin, like third person mesh, you don't have to do this part of making the rig because they already have it defaulted. They already have an IK rig on that. But if you're using the first person arms, if you're following along the tutorial, or you have your own mesh from like third party, you know, like Place or maybe the Epic Store, I would suggest doing this. Now you can look inside the folders of your assets just to see if your character's mesh it's probably going to be in its like where the skeletal mesh and asset physics access is. If they have a control rig, they may have one, but if it doesn't have an IK, it's a lot harder to make animations with FK. So I would suggest just making a modular rig from scratch, which is very simple. So what you're going to do is you're going to find your skeletal mesh. You're going to right click on it, go to create, and modular rig. It's going to make this new control rig. I'm going to rename this to arms, and then I'm going to double click and open it up. And when you open it up, you'll see your mesh of your character. Mine is just arms. And then you're going to see this little dot mostly in the center. And these dots are going to appear when we start filling them with their rig. And when you hover over them, they tell you what to put on or to drag onto them. So this one says the spine. So I like to click on the circle itself so it highlights it. And then I'm going to come over here to spine and then drag it. And then now you can see it's on the spine circle, and then it's going to add these new ones, and you do the exact same thing. So these say shoulder, my bad. So I'm going to click it, hold control, and click this one so it highlights them. I'm going to come over here to shoulder and drag it on there, and then the same thing for the arms, then the neck, and then the fingers. Now the fingers do not say to drag the finger, but I guess self-explanatory. And then if you're doing a full body, like a third person character, you would want to add the thigh sockets, and then after you add those, you'll see the feet will pop up, and you add the feet. And so I'm done with mine, and this is what it looks like. And now we're going to go to the arm over here in the module hierarchy and make sure the FK-IK default is enabled, and also make sure the other arm is also, and that are the squares right here. And this is the IK. Now, if you turn this off, you can see these are circles. This is FK. You're not able to move with these. You only can rotate, and I will show you that in the sequencer when we add the sequencer. So make sure this is enabled. Another thing, if you're using 5.5, I'm not sure in earlier versions if this is even an option or if it's even enabled, but you want to make sure we disable the PV follow on both the arms. So click on the other arm and also turn that off. The reason being is because when we make the reload animation in 5.5, it messes up the elbow when we're trying to attach the left hand to the IK of the gun, or where the character will be holding it. So just make sure that's off. And the reason we're checking these boxes is because when we make a new sequencer, we would have to go in there once we add the control rig and check these boxes off every time. Now you can do that. It's not going to take a long time, but it's, you know, I think it's better to go ahead and do it here so you don't have to do the extra step each time you make a new sequencer. The neck here, I don't think this is in 5.4. It may be, I'm not sure, but I like to just enable the FKIK on the neck. And then just compile and save, and then we're done with that. We can close that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our characters mesh and drag it into the world. I'm then going to get the weapon, our skeletal mesh of the weapon we're using, and drag that into the world. And also get the mag that goes with the weapon and drag it to the world. I'm then going to take the mag itself and parent it to the M4. And as you can see, it says it cannot do that because it's a static mobility. Now, if your gun that wherever you got yours from, some asset packs, they have the mag as a skeletal mesh. Most of them have them as static meshes, which is like the one I have. Now, if it's skeletal mesh, yours should be able to parent here. But if it's a static mesh, it's because it's on static. So all you need to do is just click on the mag and change the movable. And then if you try to put it back on, as you can see, we can do it now. And then I'm going to put it on the mag bone. And then I'm going to come to rotation location and zero it out with the little arrows. And mine is not the same axis as the gun, so I got to rotate it. Now yours might be in the gun like it's supposed to be, but mine isn't, so I'm going to rotate it. Now, if you come into the issue where it doesn't, when you rotate it, it doesn't go into the gun like this, you might want to turn the world space off and use local space. But mine works for world space, so I'm gonna keep it at that. So now if we move the gun, the mag is connected to the gun. I'm then going to add a camera. Now, if you're doing full body animations, if you're making like a third person game, you don't need to add this camera. But if you're doing first person, like I'm doing in this project, we need to have a camera because when we're making the animations, we want to know what it looks like from the perspective of us playing the game. And so we're going to come up here to the add in the cube icon and search for camera actor and then drag it into the world. I'm then going to take this camera actor and parent it to the where's it at? Our character's skeleton mesh. I'm going to parent it to the head bone and then come to rotation and location and zero it out. And then if you open up your character's blueprint, now if your project, if you're not following along, and if you didn't follow along in the first video, if your project, if you have your mesh, if it's a child of the follow camera and not a parent like we have here, or if it's not even attached, then you could try copying the numbers, like the location rotation, and pasting it like we're about to do, it here. But if that doesn't work, you're just going to have to like look at this and then try to rotate this to make it look as close as possible. But if your location is on 0, you really don't have to worry about that, because you could just put it on 90 degrees and then rotate it and then rotate it, and it should be perfect. Now you could do it that way, or you can come over here to make sure the camera is selected, and you can, in this little gray area beside location, you can copy or rotation copy, and it's going to copy all of these numbers. And then you can come back over here to camera actor and then right click and paste. As you can see, it changed it a little bit because that would be what this is. But that's as long as yours is on 0, even if it's not parented, you should be able to just rotate it. But if it isn't, you're going to let play around with it. If yours is parented, like I'm saying, you can copy these numbers and then paste them here, and it should be the exact same as long as the mesh is the parent of the follow camera. Next thing we're going to do is take the rifle or the weapon itself, and we're going to put it on the character's parented to the character skeletal mesh. And I'm going to put this on the weapon socket. The weapon socket is the socket we made in the first video. Now, if you already have your logic of spawning the weapon, you already probably have a socket. You want to just put it onto the socket where your gun's going to go. Next thing we're going to do is make the level sequencer. So there's 2 ways you can do it. You can come up here to this icon here and click add level sequence, and it'll pop this up, and you just name it whatever you want to name it, hit save, and it should pop up a new tab. Or you can come wherever you want to put it in your content browser and look up level sequence. I'm going to just name this static pose and double click, and this is what you should see when it opens up. Now yours is probably going to be docked to the left over here. So this is where all the keyframes and the actual animation, the bones and stuff are going to be at. So we have a sequencer curves, which is, we're not going to be using it in this video, but the reloading video, we're going to be using it. The sequencer itself here, this icon here is probably going to be gray. Well, it's better to have this on because it's more convenient when you're making animations. It's an automatic keyframe. So just make sure every time you create a new sequencer, come up here and make sure this diamond with the key inside is enabled, which will be blue. You have your timeline here with, if you hold and click on the orange tab thing here, you can move it around. So you can like look through your animation, you know, slow or faster, however you want to do it. Down here we have, this is how you move between the graph. So if you come to the ends, there's these little squares that highlight blue, and you can drag them in so you can zoom in more on the keyframes, and then you could take, you know, the middle slider and move around. But if you have it stretched out, you have the full in the graph, so you can't move it. So what we're going to do now is take the skeleton mesh. So I like to click on the skeleton mesh, and it highlights it over here in the outliner. Find it faster. I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it over here in this blank area. And as you can see, it adds the skeleton mesh, it adds an animation tab, it adds the transform tab. We're going to do the same thing for the weapon. And I like to take the character's skeleton mesh and dock it above the weapon. That's just a preference. You don't have to do that. You do not have to add the mag. The mag is just in the gun, just so we can see the mag when we're actually taking it out of the gun, and how we need to pose our hands and fingers so it looks like he's actually grabbing it. Next thing is we're going to add the control rig, or the modular rig that we just made in the beginning of the video. So to do that is, you want to come to your skeleton mesh of your character and this little add icon. We're going to click it and come down to control rig. And as you can see, it shows up, and mine says arms. So I want to click it. And then as you can see, it adds the rig that we made. And then also, what's going on here? A new tab pops up, but I can't. I don't know what's going on there. Let's I want to save this and close. This is supposed to open up, but there's supposed to be like a little tab up here that says animation. I don't know why it's not doing that, so I'm just going to close it and then reopen it. Window. Let's try it again. I'm not sure why this is not. The sequencer animation is not opening. There we go. I forgot to click on the arms. Okay. Okay, we got that fixed. So now you should see this animation. I don't know why I did that bug, but you should see this new animation tab. And then if you don't see your sequencer curves, it's right here. It's this little square with the curve in it. You click it, and I'm gonna put it back there. So these are the three main tabs that I use when I'm making animations. The animation tab is, you know, we have these boxes over here that we can turn things on and off. I usually use the high control shapes, which has the rig, and that's good to use when you want to actually see the animation without the rigs being in the way. We're going to be using spaces and constraints in the next video, not in this video. So the next thing I like to do is, obviously we want to be able to look through this camera while we're editing. So you can click on the camera and this viewport pops up on the bottom. You can click this little pin preview icon and it docks it. So even if you click off the camera, it stays here and you can see from this perspective. I don't like doing it that way because it's not large enough to be able to see more of the picture. So what I like to do is come to Window and search Viewport and then Viewport 2, and then adds this new viewport. Now I have a second monitor. I like to take this and put it on the second monitor and enlarge it. But for YouTube purposes, I'm going to put it all in this window. So I like to take the sequencer tab, pull it off, pull it out from here, the animation, put it in the same one. So they're all in their separate, I guess, tab, you can call it. And then I like to dock this whole thing to the left side of the screen. And then I'll take the viewport 2 and dock it to the right top and the viewport 1 on the bottom. If you then come to viewport 2 in perspective and you want to click on the camera actor, and this is going to be inside this, you're going to see now through this camera. Now do not move in this viewport. Do not edit in this viewport. You can left click, like if you need to, if like you have something selected, like you here and you want to see, you know, you're just over here, you can click, but do not move, rotate anything in here. Only edit in this one, in this viewport, because if you move in this, you're going to move this camera itself. You're going to pilot it and it's going to remove it from the arms, and that's what we do not want. So now if we come over here to the sequencer, as you can see, we have arms, which it added the arms control rig also when we add, as other things popped up. If you do the little drop down beside arms, it's going to show you all the bones that are part of the rig that we're using. Now, if you have a full third person character mesh, you're going to have more, because you're going to have the thighs, the feet, calves, and whatever other bones there are with that. And so to explain this keyframe, automatic keyframe that I was showing to enable earlier, if we were to, well, one more thing, this is crucial when you make a new sequencer. On the control rig itself, there's this little icon in the middle between these two arrows. This is the keyframe. So you want to click this and it's going to add a new keyframe. And if you do it here, it would do it for all the bones below, which is what we want to do. So if I now come over and drag the timeline to like 30 frames, and then if I were to move this arm, I'm going to go in world space. As you can see, it automatically added this keyframe by just moving over here. And if we drag this, you can see it goes to the location that I moved it to, which because it's keyframed it. Now, if you do not have this enabled, if I move this arm, you see there's no keyframe. You have to manually come to the actual rig, the whatever bone that you're rigging, and click the icon here, which is the keyframe, to then add it. So it's more convenient to have this on. So it's, you know, an easier, you know, workflow when you're making animations. So now we're going to start making the static pose. So I'll explain these rigs a little better before I do that. So like this red ball here is your right elbow. This is your left elbow. So if you see, if I move it, you see it moves the whole thing. And then if you click on the circles here, you now see the IKs for the shoulders to pop up. Same thing. You can, I can't rotate it that way. Well, why is this not rotating? Maybe you can't rotate that. All right, there it goes. You can rotate it and move it around. This is like an FK. You don't really want to move the circles. The squares, they're fine to like move, like actually, hold on one second. Actually move like this. But the like circles, which are more like FKs, You just want to rotate them. Because if you try to move FK rigs, it stretches the mesh, but IKs do not. So I'm going to make the static pose, and then we can go from there. So all you want to do now is just, make your this is generally just making the pose that we're going to be using. That's going to be, like, you could say, the parent to all the other animations. So this pose right here, you want to make sure that you're making this pose exactly how you want the gun to look when he's, you're in like an idle state, maybe even like a walk state. You want to make sure this pose is exactly how you want it, because after this pose and we start making the animations for this gun, if you try to change the beginning and end of the animations of those duplicated animation or sequencers, the animations are not going to look right, because it doesn't have the same pose as the static mesh, which is like your default parent one. I think right there is pretty good. So I like to get the right hand where the gun's up and it looks decent, and then I'll take the left hand and move it to the position where, like, he's holding the gun. Now, as you can see, he can't really reach it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on, well, I have the left one selected already, so we can hold control and click on the right IK. And then we're going to move the gun back. I'll move it back to right there. And then I'm going to click on the left one and drag it out. Now, as you can see, the arm is no longer stretched out, and he also can reach further. So I'm going to pose the right hand so it looks like he's holding the gun. Now, if you come over here to the animation tab and check the high control, this is what I was talking about earlier. So now you can see a more clear picture without the rigs in the way of how it actually is going to look. I think I'm going to drag this down some. Now, the position of this doesn't matter too much, because we're using, now if you're using only animations, you're not using an IK for your left hand, you want to take more time and put the hand exactly where you want it. But if you're using an IK like we are in this project, it doesn't really matter where you put it in this axis, or I would even say this axis, but you want to put it close to where you're going to put it, because you're going to be, you do need to edit the fingers to where they're actually going to be on the gun, but the hand itself is not a big of a deal, because we're going to be moving the IK, which is going to be moving the hand. So I think that's good for there. I'm then going to come over to the other side, and I'm just going to move the fingers up to the gun. Now, you want to probably take your time with this and get a better, I guess, grip with this hand, so the fingers, they look better. But I'm just doing it this way quick because it's just a tutorial. I think that's good for now. That's not the thumb. Sometimes the rigs are inside the actual hand. So you might have to go inside the body. Now, if you're following from the first tutorial, I am getting close and it's not clipping. So if you have a new project, you want to go up to Edit, Project Settings, and just search clip, and it should be near clip plane under settings. Change it from 10 to a regular number. You can even put it to 0. I just put it to 0.1, and then, you know, make sure you enter and then exit this, save your project. You know, make sure you save everything, and then close your project, reopen it, and then now you can get as close as you want until you actually go inside the actual mesh, so you don't have that clipping issue. Go over to the animation and high control. I think that looks good. Then going to come over to the right hand and do the exact same thing. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, but make sure you were on 0, 0, 0 of your timeline when you're doing this. Now, if you accidentally have yours anywhere past 0, don't worry. All you need to do is just hold left control and drag over all the keyframes that are over here. Hold control, hit Control C, and then just put the timeline on 0, and then hit Control V, and you'll paste it, and then it'll be in the location it needs to be. You don't have to restart. Oh, that is not the thumb. Now, if your weapon is above the hand like this and you want it to be down more, you can go inside your skeletal mesh of your weapon, and or not your weapon, your character, like we did in the first video. But if you don't know how to do that, maybe in your own project, you want to find your skeletal mesh where your weapon socket is, and you just want to move it down, mostly on the Z-axis, until it is sitting on the hand like it would regularly be if you were holding the gun. So that should be good. And then I'm going to just come up here to high control shapes and just check on it one more time. I think it's decent. So now, once you're done with that, we now have our static pose, which is going to be like our base, or I guess our parent to all the other sequencers that we're going to be using to do animations. I'm going to take the end of the timeline, which is this red line, and just drag it down to like 30 frames, because this animation doesn't need to be that long. You can even put it down to 1 frame or 0 frame because they don't really need to be, but I'm just going to put it here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bake it so we then can use it in our animation blueprint. So if you go to your skeletal mesh, right click on it, go to Bake Animation Sequencer, and then find where you want to save it. Just going to name it Static Weapon Pose, hit OK, and then export to animation. I believe that says sequence. Yep, sequence. As you can see, it has a new sequence. I'm going to save all this. I'm going to close the tab here, and I'm going to close the viewport too. And then I'm going to go to where I saved it, and as you can see, we have this new animation sequence. And if you open it up, it is the same pose and everything we just made, but now it's an animation. If we now go into our animation blueprint, and we're going to go into our locomotion, idle. Now, in the asset browser over here is where it's going to be. If you do not see the animation here, it's because of the skeleton that the animation blueprint is using. Now, if you're following along with the first video, to fix this, what you need to do is go to the first person arms. Now, if you're retarget, because you can retarget the animation. So for instance, you can go to the animation, right click and retarget animation, and then you're going to retarget it. You're going to retarget it from the arms to Manny, if you know you're using a newer version of Unreal. But and then you just click the static thing, export animation, and then you have the animation. But I would suggest, if you're using like a custom mesh, that you do it the other way, which is you want to find your character's mesh. You then want to find his skeleton, and you want to copy the name of it. You're going to go, I like to go over here to the animation blueprint, hit the search icon and folder, and then your animation blueprint, right click on it, hit assign skeleton, and then paste the name, and it's here, and then accept, and then I think another thing pops up. It says accept, and that's going to change the animation blueprint skeleton to the one that you're using on your character. Now, I did it that way in this one, even though I could have just retargeted, because the hands are the same on the first person arms as they are on the third person character. But if you're using custom mesh, I would do it that way, where you assign the skeleton. So then, because if your skeleton maybe has bigger arms, hands, or is maybe smaller, the animation is going to look wonky. You know, it's not going to look like it's supposed to. So I would suggest changing the skeleton. But now we have that. You want to just drag the animation sequence into the graph here and connect it to there, which is our idle state. And I'm gonna come up here to locomotion, click it, and then click in walk and run, and then paste it here. Or you can come over here and drag it over here again. I pasted it just by highlighting it, hit Control C, and then hit Control V. And then now we can go into our game and hit play. And as you can see, we now have the pose that we created in animation sequence. Now, you may not see your left hand on the gun right here. It probably is going to be here, way back here. If you're following along with the tutorial of the first video. So to fix that, we need to come to our weapon skeleton mesh and open it up. I'm just going to dock this over here, and dock this over here. And then I'm going to play the game. And if I hit FN8, which I don't know what it is for full keyboard, but for my keyboard it's FN8 to pilot the camera out of where it's supposed to be. You then can move your camera here and come over here to the left hand IK socket, and you can move it where it needs to be. You can move it this way. Now you can't rotate it. It doesn't work that way. So if it needs to be rotated, you just have to go inside the sequencer again and fix the animation and then bake it again. But I'm going to put it right there. I think right there is pretty good. I'm just going to save this, close this. Then I'm going to hit FN8 again to get back into back to the character. So we now have made the static pose, as you can see, and this pose is going to be the parent, like I was saying earlier in the video, to all the other animations we're going to be making for this specific gun. And I'll explain more about this, this level sequencer, like I was saying earlier, about how this is going to be the parent to all the other ones. I'll explain that in the next video. And in the next video, we'll be making the reload animation and also making the code that when we press a key, we play the animation inside the game. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.